Well, to talk about all of this, I'm joined now by three members of the European Parliament. We have Wim van der Kamp, who is from the Dutch Christian Democrats, who are currently in government, in coalition, in fact, with the Liberals. We have Sarah Ludford, who's a British Liberal Democrat, who speaks for her party on these matters of asylum and immigration. And we also have Nick Griffin from the British National Party. So thanks all of you for joining me. Sarah, is there a danger, do you think, that the EU is losing sight of the need to protect people in the desire to make sure that they don't get into the European Union?
I think there is that danger, yes. I think that for a decade there's been a lot of rhetoric about the need for balanced and orderly migration and asylum systems, and the member states have not delivered. And so we therefore have a situation where it's possible that people who deserve refugee status, deserve asylum, are not properly being identified and protected, and yet there is not complete confidence in the integrity of the external borders of the EU. And then you have populist, playing to the extremist right-wing gallery that is going on in some countries, namely Italy, for instance.
Do you think it is a populist view, Wim van der Kamp, to say, look, one of the solutions here is to be able to reimpose national border checks if things get out of hand?
No. I fully support the principles of the Schengen Agreement, and I think we have to take care about them. But in the meantime, there are concerns of the citizens in Europe. And I think the European elite at this moment is far too much busy with the principles of the Schengen Agreement and not with the practical work out. For example,
not addressing people's concerns.
Exactly. For example, these 25,000 people from Tunisia, most of them are labor migrants. They have to stay in Tunisia for building up their new free country. Now they come to Italy and now they pass to France to have a shop in Lyon and a shop in Chartres. Of course, I understand their feeling for a better economic position in Europe. Their families are also coming. But that's not the aim of the refugee treaty from '59 in Geneva. And we have to be sharp on this point, because if we don't, this famous populistic party takes it over, and then we as Christian Democrats are losing the principles of the Schengen.
You would have thought that would be the case, but Nick Griffin, if you look at your showing in the last local elections, actually that isn't happening. You aren't getting support for your sort of points of view. In fact, you experienced something of a wipeout, didn't you, at the polls? So well, you're not actually getting your message through on that.
The Labour Party in some areas changed the boundaries in order to get us out, so there was a bit of bias there. But coming back to the point where you started about protecting people, I think that's the absolute key to it. On the way over here this week, I was stopped by a British lorry driver in a service station in Flanders who said to me, you've got to do something about what's happening at the Channel ports, because he personally and most of his colleagues in the last few weeks have been threatened by gangs of Tunisians with knives. Take us in your lorry to Britain or you are going to get stabbed. And we need to talk about protecting people. The people we need to be protecting are the people of our countries, the people who've got competition for jobs, competition for housing, and problems of criminality from people coming across from the Maghreb who have no right to be in Europe.
The problem, though, is not really in Britain.
I have no grief for any migrant, legal or illegal or irregular, who threatens people with knives, threatens lorry drivers. So, I mean, that's a case just simple of criminality, which has got to be addressed.
There is an issue here, which is that these are economic migrants, and they aren't refugees. And listening to the debate in the chamber yesterday, they were referred to at times by refugees. It doesn't, I mean, it is confusing.
It's very important to maintain the distinction, because if you don't maintain the distinction, you do end up in a complete muddle. You have to have a channel of entry which respects the UN refugee, the World Refugee Convention, and that is a long-standing and core principle.
And do you accept that, Nick Griffin, that you need to offer protection to those who genuinely need it, and there needs to be a system in Europe which is just properly working that out. That would help those people that are concerned about people who feel they don't have the right to move into to the UK. That surely is the answer.
I think the way to deal with the distinction between people who are genuine refugees, and I don't think there's many of them, and people who are economic migrants, is to take away the economic incentive to go to places like Britain. Quite simply, if people aren't allowed to sign on and get benefits, and if people aren't allowed to work, and if they do work illegally, then the companies which employ them are heavily fined, then people won't come. Take away the jam and the wasps will stay at home.
What I believe in is that you must, for economic migration, I mean, it's clear that Europe has benefited from legal economic migration, but it has to be properly regulated channels of legal migration, not just a sort of, you know, uncontrolled flows which don't meet our labour needs.
I fully agree with Sarah that we need legal migration, but this is not a form of legal migration. This is just coming in a small boat with all the secrets, the smugglers, coming to Lampedusa and making the whole system rotten or broken. I don't know how you say it in English. The other point is that now we are talking about labour migrants from Tunisia. The problems in Libya are still very severe. I think there are more real refugees who come into the convention.
Yes.
And what are we going to do?
We are going to get, I mean, it's true, isn't it, that there aren't many refugees at the moment among those 25,000, but there could be more. And is the system ready to receive them? And should we not have a system where there's more burden sharing? At the moment, they're just landing in Italy and in Malta.
They need
first, Sarah.
Well, there needs to be a combination. First of all, the first state that receives people has to process them properly and decide whether they are candidates for asylum or they're not. The second lot do have to be returned. But then there can be some kind of process of co-responsibility among member states. Possibly you could look at some kind of resettlement or sharing scheme. But the initial responsibility has to be on those countries. And if they haven't sorted out their reception arrangements or their, you know, officials to see people and fingerprint them and so on, so to be able to identify them, well, then that's just an administrative failure by some countries, and that is not tolerable in the EU.
You can't argue with that,
well,
can you?
Let's deal, first of all, go back and deal with the question of whether or not Britain needs immigration.
No. We're talking specifically about how the EU deals with refugees coming from Libya. No.
Earlier on, you discussed the question. I wasn't allowed to put the point that Sarah there said that Britain needs immigration. We've got 10 million Brits of working age not working. Why on earth do we need to import more unemployment?
She said we need targeted in some sectors.
We have skill shortages. I was last Friday on the Thameslink system in London, where they are upgrading all the rail systems in London, and about half the people working on that project are foreigners, mainly EU migrants, Poles, Lithuanians and so on, and they said we cannot get the people. We cannot get the skills or the people. We can't get the people willing to work in construction. So thank you to the Poles and Lithuanians who are working on London's railway system. I wish there were Brits willing and able to take this job.
Wim, let's go to Wim.
Please don't mix up the legal shortage of people and the illegal immigrants from Tunisia now, because that gives the European citizens a lot of concern. In the meantime, I have to repeat that the decisions made by the Italian government by giving these temporarily permits for going into the rest of the Schengen area was a real wrong thing.
Yes.
I think one of the problems started with the Italian government. And then, of course, they are talking about the reaction of the French president. But in the meantime, I can follow him that if one of the member states makes such a bad decision, and the whole process started, and now we are talking about 2 prime ministers instead of the principles of the Schengen area.
I mean, it's not a total sort of overwhelming number to cope with. Okay, 25,000 coming from Tunisia seems a lot, but in the early 90s there were 400,000 Bosnians and Kosovans and so on. So Italy should be able to cope with processing 25,000. I agree with him. It was totally irresponsible of Italy to issue temporary residence permits and somehow give the idea, which actually is not true. They did not obey Schengen law.
We're exaggerating the problem.
Well,
it was
I don't think
an exaggeration.
You're talking about 25,000. The fact is they're coming in. I was talking to an Italian earlier on today about Lampedusa. They're coming in at the rate of a 1,000 a day. This is a huge flow, and it's going to get bigger unless we put away the jam so they don't want to come here.
Well, I mean, one of the issues...
Well, what's the jam? I mean, I
jam is
absolutely
benefits and
agree.
it's jobs
No, it's not
when our
benefits.
people are unemployed.
Most people are not going to be able to claim benefits if they come in illegally, and I agree with them. I absolutely condemn smuggling, the smuggling gang, for making money. But however, you know, so we should get our police together to crack down on the smuggling gang. But most of the people who are coming, they won't qualify for benefits because they're living in the black economy. They will work.
Exactly.
Well, the EU has brought in a directive to deal with people who employ illegal immigrants.
But it's a slap on the wrist. You need to give them one big fine, and the second time take away their business. That's going to get jobs for our people.
You need to check up on the employers who employ in illegal ways, and also all of us have got to be prepared that the things we buy are made with people who are earning a decent wage.
Briefly back to women, and we must end it there.
Yeah, I think we have to take care that the facts are not overruling our judicial system. And with this approach of let them come in and they live for 1 year or 2 years in a black economy, and at the end they are legalized, that's completely the wrong approach. Because that also gives concerns to the people, and at the end it gives space, room for the populistic parties.
The EU, after 10 years of talking, needs to sit down and have a proper, well-controlled, orderly, legal migration system which actually meets the labour needs we do have, and not just throw up its hands and be unable to cope.
Agree. All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much.